I'm Stephen Ben Danoon, and you're watching Israeli News Live. Today we hear the sad news of Mr. Foley, Jim Foley, or James Foley, the journalist that was beheaded by ISIS in the Middle East, a jihadist group that has gone on a rampage not only against the Catholic population, also the Christian population there in those countries, but has made a war of terror against their own people just because they're of another ethnic group or another belief of their own. They have been on a terror campaign against all the different peoples that do not agree with what they are doing. In fact, today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed a very interesting point I'd like to share with you, how he compares ISIS to Hamas. Let's take a look at that.
Hamas is like ISIS. ISIS is like Hamas. They're branches of the same tree. And I can say that the entire world has been shocked by the atrocities of ISIS. You saw this, the beheading of an American journalist, Foley. It shows you the barbarism, the savagery of these people. Well, we face the same savagery. The people who wantonly rocket our cities and want to conduct mass killings. And when they can, they murder children, teenagers, shoot them in the head, throw people from the 6th floor, their own people, and use their people as human shields. Hamas is ISIS, ISIS is Hamas. They're the enemies of peace, they're the enemies of Israel, they're the enemies of all civilized countries. And I believe they're the enemies of the Palestinians themselves. And I'm not the only one who believes that.
As we see the Prime Minister express here the similarities between, or basically the same, not just the similarity, that Hamas and ISIS are one and the same. They have the same mindset, and that's to kill and murder civilians. As he said, they shot 3 teenagers right in the head, did not care what they did. In fact, there is some suggestion that it was actually militants of the ISIS group that killed the 3 teens, the 3 Israeli teens. Well, I think it's getting high time that if the world will do nothing else about ISIS, that the Prime Minister of Israel take that stand, take that forward stand. As the King of Israel, he should actually make the bold stand and begin to put down all of these regimes that are rising up. In fact, if he doesn't do it, then indeed God will have to send the 2 witnesses to do the job that the Prime Minister will fail to do. It's a shame, and it's ironic, even for the Pope of Rome, who basically, well, it's not basically, he does rule the world. He controls the Israeli military, not the Israeli military, but he controls the American military, he controls the EU, he controls the British military, the United Nations. And yet, what is he doing? He is allowing the innocent Christians and Catholics to be killed in these countries. I say innocent, even the Catholic people there that are being beheaded. They're trying to serve God what they believe is right, although I do not agree in principle whatsoever with their beliefs, yet the Pope does nothing about it. Oh, yes, let the United States do a few little airstrikes to make it look good, but in the long run, nothing is being done. Just allow them to all be slaughtered. No wonder why God is going to bring down all nations into Israel. He'll bring his 2 witnesses down. He'll enter into judgment with these nations for the evils and the atrocities they've done to Israel down through the years. No wonder why all the nations are turning against Israel, and the riots are happening around the world. In every country, every place that you go, there are those that hate the Jews and are crying out for their death. Is a jihadist group called ISIS, is this only a ploy or something of the Vatican to draw sympathy upon the organization and to make it look like that the Christian people are being targeted? Well, certainly we know ISIS as a jihadist Islamic group, they have no regard to life whatsoever, so they couldn't have picked a better people to go around murdering people, just as this innocent journalist James Foley was so brutally murdered. That's kind of interesting. It's starting to catch headlines because an American journalist is murdered. Well, and then America complains, and so does the EU and Britain and all the rest of them when the Israelis, when they're trying to deal with Hamas, who is ISIS, as the Prime Minister says, when we try to deal with Hamas, and Hamas grabs little children off the street and the children are killed as a result. And then the world looks down upon Israel and says that, well, you are just nothing but children. You're killing children. You're killing innocent civilians. I guess they forget that the United States, what they did in Japan, the Japanese targeted Pearl Harbor and the American fleet that was there. And so the U.S. had a right to retaliate against Japan in trying to stop the military advancement against the United States that the Japanese did. But was it right for the United States to take 2 nuclear bombs and kill 250,000 civilians in Japan? Was that not deliberately targeting a civilian population? We have to think about it. You see, Israel is not deliberately targeting the civilian population, but America did. Also, when they were trying to put down Nazi Germany, and of course, any Jew, we would applaud the fact that finally somebody decides to stop Hitler in his tracks. But what did they do in order to bring that to a stop? They targeted Dresden. And they bombed relentlessly the city in order to make Adolf Hitler surrender. Well, in this case, he didn't surrender. No telling what happened to Adolf Hitler. No doubt maybe he was smuggled off by the Vatican down to South America, along with all the other thugs that were part of the Nazi regime. It's interesting how only one was ever brought to justice. The rest seemed to miraculously disappear and avoid total persecution. And of course, the Vatican was very instrumental in making sure that happened. If we want to see who the true Edom is, may he stand up and take off his triple crown. Then you will see who Edom really is. Anyway, I'm just, I guess, at the very edge of dealing with the things that we see around the world. No doubt, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is wonderful and godly of a man I believe him to be. He's not going to be able to stand up against the world that is coming against Israel. In fact, even he, much to my own dismay, has gone to the Pope on numerous occasions. At least I thank God he wasn't like Shimon Peres, who says that the Pope of Rome is the only one that can bring peace to the Middle East. In fact, maybe this is the real purpose that Rome is looking for, to bring ISIS against Israel. And then maybe the Pope will step in and try to put a stop to everything. Why? Because he wants to be able to look like the great peacemaker when Israel is being attacked from every side. As Barry Hamish once said, in fact, recently said, he even said this to me himself, he said, I really am concerned, Steve. We see right now, we're watching as Hamas is lobbing bombs into Israel, but what if Hezbollah gets into the picture? What if Syria gets into the picture? Which in this case, Syria will be ISIS that gets into the picture and begins to attack Israel. Then we will see brutality against Israeli civilians like we've never seen before. Is this where they will be able to leverage against the Israeli government to say, yes, we will step in, yes, we will drive back this horrible jihadist group, which they are a horrible jihadist group. Do not misunderstand me there. My question is who is really pulling the strings? You have to remember, when we look back 2,000 years ago, when the Babylonian Empire that was controlled by Rome came and sacked the city, burned it, killed the inhabitants of it, merciless, with no mercy whatsoever. There was an east and a western leg, the western leg being Rome itself, but the eastern leg, and they said many of the soldiers were from, as we would call, the eastern side of it. But it was the great General Titus that led them, who was out of Rome. No wonder why the treasures went back to the catacombs of the Vatican as we know it today. We really do need to consider what the news really is. And I know I'm being a little bit brash about, I don't know if that's the right word or not, brass about what I'm saying here, but it needs to be told the way it should be told. It will take God sending the 2 witnesses to bring the rest of the world under judgment for the evils and the atrocities. And there are genuine, real Christians that are being murdered by this group ISIS, just as this innocent young man, James Foley, who, as his parents have said, He had a passion for telling the story, regardless of the cost. He took a calculated risk, as his colleagues have pointed out. But he knew the risk, but he refused to back down. He wanted the people's stories told. And he lost his life as a result. It is a shame that something has happened like this. And it's interesting how that the world now is beginning to take notice. Remember, jihadists also notice that when Americans are touched by it, for them, it's a great, great victory. And sadly to say, so many are against the Jewish people, so many are against the Jewish state, the state of Israel. But it's probably going to be Israel that'll be man enough to stand up against the group ISIS and bring them down. I'm Stephen Ben-Danoon with Israeli News Live. Baruch Hashem.